Hi everyone, it's Roger and James here from the What on Disney Plus podcast. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about some of the new trailers that got released this week, from Elemental and also Darby and the Dead. We're going to be talking about maybe some possible issues going on right now with Disney's Marvel animation. Plus, we've got loads of stuff to review. It's almost like there's a big holiday coming up in America and they wanted to get a load of stuff out for it. It was a big week for releases, wasn't it? It was like crazy amount of releases this week.
And a lot of them on Friday too, which was kind
Yeah.
of problematic for me. I know you get a lot of them in advance, but
Yeah.
there were three like hour and a half-ish
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
things dropped on Friday. I did not
Yeah.
get to watch all of them.
Oh, before we jump any further, quick bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already done so, make sure you go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. You can sign up to our newsletter. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and on Twitter. So obviously, if you're on Twitter and you're going to want to make sure that you're kind of following us somewhere else, that's always a good thing. On that note, guys, let's jump into it. So let's start off talking about a couple of the trailers that came out this week. Elemental, the new Pixar movie coming out in June next year. What did you think of this trailer?
Well, it looks very good, as you would expect from Pixar, and I'm talking about like the actual visuals of it. But as with most trailers this far out, it's difficult to tell where they're actually going to go with it, because right now it just looks like it's Inside Out crossed with Romeo and Juliet or something like that. So we'll see where they're actually going with it, because this trailer is just to set the mood, and the next trailer will be the one where we actually start to find out what things, because you go back to look at Soul and like, well, what is this? This is just Inside Out, but it's soul instead of emotions, and that's obviously not what the movie was in the end.
It's funny you mentioned about like the animation, because back at the studios presentation at the D23 Expo, we actually got to see like most of this trailer, but we got to see lots of other footage as well, but some really, really rough footage. So I watched this one and he said, "Oh, it looks really good." And I'm like, well, I think for me, like I've seen this movie look really like quite bad because it's so early. So the trailer, like, oh wow, it looks decent now, because before my view of it was like, wow, it looks a bit rough right now. I mean, with what 6 months to go, 7 months to go, probably in all honesty, most of the film isn't even ready. I you would assume, and we all would assume that most of this is probably done. But there was that Frozen 2 documentary that came about where they were like, oh, we put the trailer out and we hadn't even finished the movie. We're even like a quarter in. They've got a lot of more work on it. So that definitely opened my eyes to the idea. I thought, well, I suspect it's very far from done. It looks fun. I wouldn't say I'm overly excited about it. It's a bit like you say, a bit like Inside Outy kind of again, just with elements, and I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm excited for it, definitely.
Right, but we would also have said the same thing about things like Luca, or in fact, I think we did say things like that about Luca and Soul and things like that, mostly because the first trailers really are just here's the art style, here's a character, here maybe a couple other characters that you don't even realize are yet, and that's about it. But I do agree, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, yeah, Romeo and Juliet with fire and water, cool. Let's see where they go.
I'm going to be a little bit. I don't know whether or not maybe because some footage or something like leaked from D23 or something, but it was a bit like, why now? It's like 7 months away. Like most people are going to forget about it. It's like you've not got any merchandise out for Christmas. Like, what was really the points of doing it? Maybe you should have focused more on Strange World coming out next week.
Well, I'm assuming that this was released so it can be in front of Strange World next week. It'll be one of the trailers in front of that. And yeah, sometimes trailers are to go, there's a movie coming out in 2 weeks. You really want to watch this movie, go for that. And sometimes it's just to go, hey, Pixar, you love Pixar. Here's the next Pixar. Look forward to more information.
I would be there's something I would like them to start doing a little bit better on their trailers, is be very bit more forthcoming about the idea that it's coming to theaters. Stop sending out the it's coming out in June. Say it's coming to cinemas. Let's get rid of that buzz about Disney animation kind of being straight to Disney Plus. Just say right from the word go. I know things can change, but kind of I think it would be better for them to be a little bit more like coming exclusively to cinemas or something like that first off.
Well, they might also have not decided, although at this point it does seem that exclusively to cinemas will probably be go back to being the default for pretty much
Yeah.
everything at this
I
point.
think I don't think there's a bad thing as well. I mean, as far
No.
as I'm concerned, if they can make a few million, make some money on it, generally as well, statistically, most movies do better on streaming after they've been out in cinemas, so it makes a lot of sense. Which I'm going to bring on to our next topic, really. One of them was Strange World. So obviously that hits cinemas for Thanksgiving. However, there was a report on Deadline. They were talking about like box office and numbers and stuff, and in there was a little kind of buried deep within it. They said that the exhibitors, which is basically cinemas, have been told that it's going to be hitting Disney Plus by the end of the year. So I'm gathering we're probably going to do what they did with Encanto, which we've been talked about multiple times, dropping around maybe Christmas Eve or maybe even New Year's Eve or something like that. So we now that's come through there. There's also kind of talk that Black Panther Wakanda Forever is going to have a longer theatrical run, at least 45 days and beyond, which again we just assumed would be the case because it's done so well. But it's kind of one of those things of there's a lot of publicity right now. They had a London event this morning, and there was a premiere a couple of days ago. There's a premiere in the El Capitan. The El Capitan Theatre in Hollywood has been very busy this week with the amount of premieres going on ahead of next week's Thanksgiving. It's almost like because with Encanto, they kind of said beforehand that it was coming to Disney Plus on Christmas Eve. They're not doing it this time. They're being. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, why would you? But I went to look at cinema tickets for Strange World. One showing a day at 5 p.m. I'm like, well, that's not a good time for me. That's just like doesn't work with my, with life. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to go when kids can go. I like to go when it's quiet and during the day. For me, generally, I like to go in the morning or in the afternoon, so the cinema's quieter, so I can enjoy it properly. So I was like, well, one cinema a day. Well, I'll be waiting for Disney Plus. I literally I don't want to go at 5 o'clock in the evening. That's when I spend time with my wife. That's when we have dinner and stuff. That's not a practical time for me.
Right. And looking at my local theater, we have between 2 and 7 showings per day, which for a brand new movie that is coming out that week is absolutely tiny in the number of showings that are available. Most premieres will have somewhere between 15 and 20 screens throughout the entire day. So it does seem to suggest that either there's a whole ton of movies coming out, which actually there are, or the cinema chains don't have an incredible amount of faith in this one.
There's been a lot of talk online about the fact that Strange World is not getting the publicity that people are expecting. And it's kind of a weird one because on one hand, Disney are sending out the press releases with the new trailers, the new featurettes, the new clips, all the stuff that they would normally be doing for every release. So that's kind of normal. Posters, they're appearing on shows talking about it. They're doing the world premiere. They've done a London premiere. You're like, okay, so they're doing everything that you would traditionally expect them to do, which is fine. At the D23 Expo, they were there. They had a big stand. Now, whether or not there's any adverts on television, not watching a huge amount of live TV, and also it's like, would they start now, like running up to Thanksgiving to kind of do that? But yeah, a lot of people go, oh, I don't know anything about this. And I'm like, well, they're putting it out there, but it's just not in the, maybe they're not spending money on advertising. There's been a lot of talk as well of like Chapek looking at like trying to reduce advertising budgets to save some money. That's one thing that they're looking at as well. But yeah, it's a very interesting thing of what's going on with this one. It's like, from my point of view, I'm like, well, they're doing the toys, they're doing the merchandise, they're doing the screening, all the news coming through, and I'm obviously more sensitive to that. It's like, well, this is the same for most movies. There's nothing really abnormal here. But the general word seems to be, oh, well, they're not advertising it a lot, or they're not promoting it. And looking at the trailer numbers, massively different from like Encanto and some of the other films. So it just might just be people are not interested. And so therefore, Disney has pulled back the marketing on this one.
It's hard to tell. It certainly feels that way, though. And just anecdotally, nobody's talking about it within my circles. Nobody. I'd be surprised if many of them even know what's coming out at all, or that it's a Disney movie.
Yeah, it's also, I think it's not very good as well because it's sandwiched between two juggernauts of Avatar and Black Panther. So it's like, where they're going to spend, all the money's been, and in some way the attention's been on Black Panther. maybe things start picking up this week. There might be a flurry of stuff, or Disney just decided it's not worth spending a huge amount of money on. We know it's not going to bring in a lot of maybe the story is a bit generic. That's been some things. There's a whole other issue with there being like a gay character, whether or not they're expecting a backlash to that. I don't know. I mean, for me, I'm a little bit like, oh, I wanted to see this film, but I'm gonna have to wait. Essentially, like, one screening a day at my local cinema just means to me like, well, that kind of feels like in, out, and gone in a week kind of thing. It's not a lot.
For me, it doesn't even have to do with showtimes. It's the fact that it's coming out over Thanksgiving week, which is one of the busiest movie holidays here in the States. You're with your family, you've just eaten way too much food, and you go to the theater to kind of, grandpa takes a nap and the kids keep them from driving everybody insane. And I'm absolutely not going anywhere near a theater this week, this coming week. It's just not happening. And if the rumors are true that it's going to be coming out somewhere around Christmas, somewhere around New Year's, I don't really feel any particular need to go out and see this, honestly.
No, it's kind of, but this is the trouble of why they don't want the word getting out that it's
right,
happening,
exactly.
Because and I do wonder, with the recession, the coming in, the cost of living crisis, families are not going to go as much. It costs. I mean, my local cinema is £5 a ticket, so it's not a huge amount. But if there's 4 or 5 of you, then it's 25 quid and snacks and parking and things like that. I know not everywhere pays parking. Every time I mentioned about parking, everyone's like, "Parking? You have to pay?" But yeah, at my local cinema, there's no car park, so you've got to pay street car parking. All adds up, and some people will be like, "Oh, I'm not paying 100 quid," because that's if more expensive cinemas. If you're in a big city and stuff, they can cost a lot more, especially if they got those nice big leather comfy chairs, which my cinema doesn't. It can all add up. But yeah, we're gonna have to wait and see. I wouldn't expect an official announcement about Strange World for at least a couple of weeks, at least probably get into December. But yeah, those box office numbers are going to be interesting to see, because people say, "Oh, well, Disney aren't into animation stuff." Disney's generally, and this is kind of one of those things, they can always be a little bit tentative about doing promotion of new movies and stuff until they know they've got a hit. And we see this with the theme parks, we see it with the merchandise. This is nothing new. This has been going on for a decade plus of Disney I know a lot of people go like Frozen, but even Frozen, the first one when it came out, didn't there was I remember it being on like the BBC News of like they couldn't get stock quick enough for Christmas because they didn't realize it was going to be a big hit. They tend, and you go to the theme parks, it takes a long time for stuff to arrive. This is nothing new.
No, we've talked about it before. Frozen's the obvious example, but even Zootopia, Encanto's not really at the parks. Zootopia is not really at the parks. I know they're doing the thing over in I think Shanghai. Big Hero 6 isn't really at the parks. These were all hit movies. They did very well at the box office and then in the post office numbers. But Disney hedges their bet. They kind of go, all right, here's a couple pieces of merchandise, but we're not going to have Baymax wandering around. We're not going to have the Encanto family wandering around, or Raya from Raya and the Last Dragon, and it'll be the same with this. So yeah, we're both kind of talking a little negative on it, but it's also because the feeling is cinemas aren't dedicating a lot of screens to it. Disney doesn't seem to be hyping it up, but a lot of the times that just isn't part of reality, where you go, we threw Encanto out there and maybe it'll do well and maybe it won't, and people are like, this is fantastic, and we love the songs in it and so on, and this could turn around to be the exact same thing. We'll have to wait and see what the consumer buzz is about it.
It's a shame, really, because I would have gone and seen it on Friday. If there'd been a morning show or an afternoon slot, I would have gone in. But again, it's just to me instantly like, this is weird. I've never had this before. It's just very strange. Like you said, there's a lot of screens, there's a lot of stuff going on, and there's not even Thanksgiving here. Right, let's now talk about another kind of leading on from the budget cuts. This past week, there's been a lot of people working at Marvel Studios on the animation projects, basically saying they've left, or they're leaving on Friday. This is not just one. We're talking directors, storyboard artists, a whole host of stuff. So there's not, when you're like looking at 7 or 8 people, and like there's a lot of like chatter, rumors, discussions of like, are the shows cancelled? What's going on there? We'd already known, for example, like they said, like Marvel Zombies is only going to have 4 episodes. Um, Originally, Spider-Man freshman year, a lot of them are working on that, and they were going to do sophomore year, the sort of I'd say a sequel series, kind of a season 2, rename it. Where it is now from Cosmic Circus, that they're going to wait and see what the reaction is to the first series before they then commission the second series, because they're still working on X-Men 97. There's also apparently another series that they're working on, untitled one. There's the Zombies, plus also What If seasons 2 and maybe 3. But yeah, it seems like something's going on with Marvel animation, of maybe, but just in general with Marvel, like they've had too much going on, and they're starting to cut back. Even Bob Chapek said in the quarterly results in his memo thing that they're doing a review of their content spending. I don't think it's a bad thing for them to actually kind of go, look, we need to see if this stuff works, if the viewing numbers are there, before we start running down the line on seasons 2. I mean, if they know it's a good one, it's a good one, but see why they may be being a bit hesitant.
Well, I think it's more than just that. I think it's on the animator side as well as the Disney side, because we've had reports, not really confirmed, but various reports of the special effects companies, which would include the animation divisions, not really happy with the way that Disney and Marvel have been treating them, and forcing them to work crunch hours and things like that for a lot of these projects. And if that's true, you could be looking at a situation very similar to what some of the tech giants are dealing with right now, or companies like Twitter, where people are just like, yeah, you want us to work crunch every single week for an entire year? You know what? I can take my skills and I can go over to this other company, or I can jump to a different field. Again, they're unconfirmed, but enough people are kind of coming out and talking about them that there may be some weight to it, and that would definitely impact my decision if I was in charge of greenlighting these shows and movies. Well, let's maybe focus more people on less projects.
I feel like in general, it's kind of funny because there was an article went out on like Variety this week about fandom did a test, a question, and was like, are you saying about people being fatigued? And I ran a similar poll on our Facebook group and on Twitter, and there was around about 30-40% of people were saying they were feeling a bit fatigued. I mean, it's still majority of 60-70% of people weren't, but and I spoke about it on numerous occasions of like, I think they just need to just dial it back a little bit. Just, it's like everything, you like steak and donuts, great, but if you're steak and donuts every week, it doesn't have the same impact. I don't know. It's kind of strange. I think we're at a point now where maybe I don't think Disney Plus. I think it still needs Marvel. It's desperately in need of Marvel. It's one of the big draws, but it doesn't need as much as it's had. Now they've got it established. Do they need as much? And I think we can tell with the budgets like they're doing with Armor Wars, but there's definitely things afoot. All these Marvel special presentations and stuff, rumors like them coming in a little bit more, and also just looking at that timetable. Yeah, I don't know. It's very strange. Stuff's happening, and all of this is all down to budgets, and it's not, and it's kind of one of those funny things as well with budgets. A lot of people like dogging on Disney for like cutting, talking about cutting staff. It seems like every major corporation right now is doing this. We've seen it with Facebook, we've seen it with Amazon, we've seen it with Twitter, we've seen it with what was it? CBS Paramount have announced some stuff. Warner, all these big companies are all like either going on freeze and stuff because they're expecting some bad wins to come in the coming year. And Disney are kind of into it. It's not great, it's not good, but it's we got to expect these kind of things, and I think it's only going to get worse.
What I find kind of ironic, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, actually, was we were watching that Mickey Mouse documentary that came out Friday, and one of the things that they talk about early on is like during the Great Depression. So we're going back to the 1900s kind of deal. They're talking about how like movies were one of the safe havens during that, because you give your kid 5 cents, they go watch the matinee, the double feature. And that gave the parents some free time because they're working all week, maybe even double jobs and things like that. And with this kind of deal potentially coming again in the next couple of years, you'd kind of think maybe movies go back to that, but it really does not feel that way. It feels like all the companies are backing off.
No, see, I look at it the entirely different way of like they had to, when they, they've done that in the past with recessions and stuff. They didn't have streaming services at home. You didn't have big televisions. I mean, I know my dad and stuff. They would go cinema every Saturday morning, and watch the matinee and stuff because they didn't even have, a television. It's like that kind of thing of, there was a reason why why that worked. And I think going into it now, people are, we got, if you've got your big TV and you've got your streaming service, you can cut. It's cheap. You're not spending any money.
But the point is, it still has to have content on it, and you still have to have the content that you can put the kids in front of, or that you can have the family time in front of. And if all the companies, including Disney, are cutting back on the content they're including, then that doesn't help quite as much. I mean, sure, you've got the back catalog. That's that's always going to be there. There will always be something to watch that you have not seen. It's physically impossible to have seen pretty much everything on these streaming platforms. But there is always something about the new, that thing that just came out on Friday or Thursday that draws people in more than going, okay, we're going to go ahead and watch the Aladdin cartoon from the 1990s or something like that.
But also they've also got the other advantage of multiple shows dropping, multiple things. You can kind of ease off a little bit on some of the bigger ones, and I think that's what we're going to see. But so that's what's going on there. We also had a trailer this past week for Darby and the Dead, which is coming to Hulu on the 2nd of December. It's also coming to Disney Plus around the world. What did you think of the trailer for that one?
It wasn't bad. I like the idea more than the trailer, honestly. The idea of the movie is kind of fun. But there was nothing in the trailer that made me go, yes, they have a very interesting idea to go with this. So,
this is kind of a perfect streaming movie, isn't it? This is the straight to streaming. Go past cinemas, a high school stereotypes kind of thing. It looks a bit of fun, so it should be a little bit. I kind of looked, it was like, it looks fine. It's probably gonna have a few moments in it, but it'll be all right. We also got a trailer for The Wonderful Binge or something like that, which is a sequel to The Binge that's coming out on Hulu as well. Suspect that'll be out internationally, but we haven't had that one confirmed. It's just a thing of drinking's outlawed and one night. It's kind of like it was like a parody of The Purge, but with drinking and smoking and stuff. So I haven't seen the first one. It just doesn't appeal to me. But
I haven't even heard of the first one.
It's called The Binge.
The Binge. First time I've ever heard of it.
Right, so there's a lot of stuff to talk about in terms of new releases. So before we jump into that, quick hello and thank you to all of our patrons and YouTube channel members. Thank you so much for your continued support. You can become a member from as little as $2. You can take part in our weekly Q&A. You also get the shout out as well. And you help support the channel. So big thank you to Tim, Chuck, David, Manmoud, Raphael, Adam, Dana, Ricky, Dave, My VCR Still Works, Bina, Joshua, Dawn, Martin, and a huge thank you to Sarah for your continued support. While over on Patreon, a big thank you to Babak. We've got Paul, Daniel, Elliot, Aero, Caleb, Red Marsman, Cody, Jacob, Darren, Lauren, Sarah, and Andrew. Thank you so much. And make sure you get your questions in. I just posted just before we start recording for this week's questions. So next week's one will be we'll do a live Q&A, but it will be open to everyone for like the Thanksgiving one. So that'll be something that we'll do next weekend. But on that, let's jump into some stuff. So, but before, there's two things I just want to briefly bring up. Check out an interview I did. There's a video up where I spoke to Jeff Malmberg, who is the director of Mickey Story of a Mouse, and also Floyd Norman, who has worked on like The Jungle Book, Sleeping Beauty, Mulan, Toy Story. I mean, that was like, if I could have had so much time, but so check out that interview. Also this week, I got to speak with Leslie Erwicks, who is the writer and the director of the Imagineering story. So there's a written review up on the website today. That was a fascinating interview because she's got the new book, The Imagineering Story. So once I finish reading that one, I'll have a review. But it's a big book. So that one was a really great interview to speak to someone. I mean, it was fantastic. Fortunately, it's just an audio one. Just a written interview. But 15 minutes with her was fantastic, picking her brain on the Imagineering story. So check that one out. All right, let's start off with the Mickey Mouse Story of a Mouse, a fantastic documentary looking at the history of Mickey Mouse. One of the things I loved about this one was that it didn't shy away too much from some of the negative aspects of the Mickey Mouse character. It didn't feel like an advert for him, because that's kind of sometimes what can happen with this one. But what did you think of this one?
I disagree completely.
Yeah,
It felt like an hour and a half advert for Mickey
yeah,
Mouse. I was totally zoned out on this one, especially when they were bringing people on talking about like Mickey Mouse is America and Mickey Mouse is all this. And just like, okay, you can pat yourself on the back. It's going to hurt after a little while, but sure. There
yeah,
were okay, so that's not fair. It's not entirely an advert. There were really good parts to it where they talked about the actual like development side, the technical side, how he's evolved over the years. And yeah, they had bits where they're like, well, we tried this and we had the one where he's fighting the giant and well, it didn't really work and things like that. So that's fair. But yeah, when I was watching this, most of it was just like, I already like Mickey Mouse. I don't need an advertisement for why I should love Mickey
it's
Mouse.
kind of funny because there was a whole chunk of it, especially in the middle bit, that I wasn't really aware of as much.
Mm.
So if that was kind of, it very much was like I enjoy the bit like how they created Mickey Mouse, and that bit's kind of been done a lot. And even the director himself said, he was trying to look for different angles and stuff. I think some of the stuff that got me was like all the Vietnam stuff, the anti-culture stuff, which is so ironic because here we are like 50, 60 years later, and Mickey Mouse is the exact opposite of anti-culture, of anti-corporations and stuff. He's if you put that one up now, that is deemed the establishment. It's kind of weird how that kind of worked. So I thought that was quite interesting because I didn't really know too much about that aspect of him. But I also really liked the whole idea that they talked about how he becomes so bland, so protected, that it was just they didn't want to use him. They couldn't use him. They couldn't do anything with him. That's why Donald Duck became the main character, because they could have fun with Donald Duck, whereas Mickey just becomes so, again, generic. They could, and like the idea that Mickey was just this boring character that kids didn't know. And then you look, and then there's like, they say like the new Mickey Mouse one, and I'm thinking, well, I'd actually say like Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, that kind of, between that one and the new shorts, like really revved up the character and stuff. Because I watched the autumn one, which we'll talk about in a bit, but you could see the character changed so much now with this one.
Right, and they talked about things like how Mickey wasn't allowed to fail within the stories. He had to be the responsible one. You mentioned Donald, but also Goofy, because they were talking like Donald was the anger outlet, because you watch some of the old shorts and Mickey definitely has some anger issues in them. And then Goofy was, well, his goofy side, gets to be a little bit playful and creative and a little bit dumb at times. And I didn't know that aspect of Donald and Goofy. I didn't know that's where they had come from and things like that. So yeah, there were very interesting parts to it. And then, them talking about how Fantasia was kind of I did know that part, but, a revitalizing of the character, an attempt to bring him back up and modernize him for the time. And then more modernization things going forward from that. Those were the parts of the documentary that I really enjoyed. The whys, the attempts, the ones that failed, the ones that didn't, so on. So yeah, from that part, definitely enjoyed those.
It's kind of weird as well, kind of them bringing up the whole thing of like getting hospitals and nurseries to try and take down Disney, because it's like, well, that was I wouldn't have expected that in an official documentary. Definitely, like, okay, but then this is the kind of the issue with documentaries and I think that's why I work with the Imagineering story. They have to do, and even the filmmaker said to me, you have to do the negative stuff, because otherwise it's just, it's not, you can't put out a good new product.
Yeah, and going to the Imagineering stories, mentioning things like the park benches were sinking into the asphalt. It's an important part of remembering the history, because if we just go, Disneyland opened up and everything was perfect and everyone had a great time, even if you know nothing about the subject, you can just go intellectually, no, it's the opening of a park. Things definitely went wrong, right? And the same thing here, pointing out that Disney has a very nasty habit of sicking lawyers on otherwise perfectly normal things, where you can go, no, let the kids have Mickey on the wall.
It was really weird, because I was watching it. There was like a UNICEF or some advert on TV this week, and there was this, they showed this hospital, and they're like Mickey, and I'm going, it's like, wow, it's like that's so easy to get picked up, like they put in an advert, and but they don't tend to things. But I know in my local town there we had an issue where someone put up a changed something into a big minion, and Universal got in touch to kind of get them to change it. It does change. But yeah, so that one was there. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I think it's probably better maybe splitting it into two and spreading it out a little bit rather than watching it in one go. But yeah, I enjoyed that one. I thought that one was good.
Yeah, I am negative on it because especially right at the beginning, it's very, rah rah, Mickey is the greatest. Yeah, Mickey is the greatest thing of all time, and you should love Mickey. And then it moves into other things. But yeah, there he is. Hi, he's watching as a Lego form. He's watching in plushie form. He's watching in your hats on the Mandalorian behind you.
So moving on from there, we also had a new Mickey Mouse short, The Wonderful Autumn of Mickey Mouse. I watched that one this morning. I really enjoyed it. It was kind of feels like, I know they held it back for Mickey's birthday, but this really should have been out like the beginning of September for Halloween because of all the pumpkin stuff. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it. I mean, turning him into this massive Mickey Mouse. And again, we were talking there about having a little bit of a side to him where he was a bit rude, not really rude, but there's a little bit of mix to him. But I thought it was good. I enjoyed that one.
I enjoyed it well enough. I don't think I'll ever go back and watch it again. Like, I'm not going to watch it next Halloween or anything like that, but I enjoyed my 20 minutes with it. Animation was fun. Comedy worked. Nothing that really jumps out at you, but the whole thing kind of comes together as a fun story.
Yeah, so that one was fun. We also had Best in Snow. Oh my word.
Oh,
this was so bad. I started watching it. I'm going to an hour and 38 minutes. Okay. And it was so cheesy. And the mayor was just like so fake. It was just
the mayor.
And then I ended up, and I'm not gonna lie, I did fast forward massive chunks of this film and got to the end. It was like, okay, the ice sculpture was, the Coco one looked amazing, that one, and I completely agree with it. But they're all like, yeah, oh, look, an empty can, yeah. And I was like, oh, stop it! It's so fake. It was just like, it was like, this is such cheap garbage. Honestly, for me, it was actually unwatchable. That was how bad it was, and that's I won't be doing a written review because it'll be a 1 because I thought this was rubbish.
I wasn't willing to go all the way towards its garbage, but it's definitely not particularly good at all, and it's too long, as you alluded to. It's an hour and a half. This should be maybe 35 minutes. Well, you need to get a little bit of time in there to explain who the people are and give their story.
But like 20 of them.
And I know. Well, that's why it's 35 minutes. But it should not be an hour and a half. The sculptures themselves looked really good. Like you said, Coco looked great. I really liked the Lion King one. I thought that looked fantastic. Obviously, I have a soft spot for the Muppets, so having Walter and the two old guys there was great. And there's a lot of talent involved, but hour and a half, that's just actually the word I would use to describe it wouldn't be appropriate for the podcast, to be honest. But the other thing you mentioned was the host, and he was okay for like when he first showed up and like, oh, this is kind of cute, he's playing this interesting character, and then he just kept appearing and being even more and more and more like leaning into this role and
character.
And it's just please stop. And eventually by the end of it, I was just like, I can't listen to this guy anymore at all. It was irritating and grating.
Yeah, it was, but it was that kind of thing. Like, this is like, and it was that kind of feeling of like, it was cheesy and fake, and them just like cheering at everything that was happening, and just like, wow, this is just I mean, they literally looked like they just like taped off an area of a town up in, I don't know, Canada or something, and just like
it's in Keystone, Colorado.
Yeah. Oh, it was. I'm not. This was probably one of the worst things I've seen on Disney Plus in a while.
It was pretty bad, and the sad thing is, it didn't have to be, because the sculptures themselves were actually really, really impressive. And if they had just focused more on the sculptures and the creation process without the intercuts of them jumping and screaming, it would have been fine. Again, shorter, not an hour and a half, please. But let the sculptures speak for themselves. They're obviously very talented individuals. Just focus on that.
I just don't get what the mayor was just like. It just seems totally like. Again, it was just like, well, is this fantasy? It's like I don't know. It's like, you know, the overhead shots going. Well, we can see like it's just at the end of a town. You know,
Right.
it was just odd. And so yeah, so I'm gonna put this one. This is like one of the worst things I've seen this year.
It's definitely not going on the top 10 lists or whatever we're doing in a couple of weeks. We haven't planned those out yet, but obviously those are coming. But you don't waste your time, guys. This is pretty bad.
We also had the Santa Clauses. So we got the first 2 episodes. New episodes are dropping each week. What did you think of this one?
I will admit it might possibly because I'm not in Christmas yet. For me, Christmas does not start until Thanksgiving, until Thanksgiving's over at the minimum. I prefer December 1st, but I'm willing to go with the end of Thanksgiving. I don't know. It just didn't click with me, but there wasn't anything wrong with it. There wasn't anything bad with it. Tim Allen was fantastic. I can't remember his wife's name, the character of his wife's name offhand, but she was fantastic. Mrs. Claus. She doesn't have a first name. Mrs. Claus. No. The kids were good for kids. Could use a little bit, but they were.
I like the fact that they were a bit awkward and a bit funny because of the fact that they have been isolated from humanity.
Yeah, they only have the elves. They don't know other kids.
You say about it being early. I ended up watching it like 2 weeks ago, and I can assure you, I was not in the holiday spirit. I just like, what on earth is this? It's like I'm just not ready for it. I know they had to get this. They look like they want to get half the series out for the Thanksgiving weekend. It just again, I know like the Christmas music's going and the decorations and the turning the lights on, but yeah, I mean I'm in that same boat of like, in December, let me know.
Right. I think it'll be much better when the Christmas spirit's actually properly going in, and I'm sure that yes, they wanted some for Thanksgiving because it's a huge family weekend here in the States, but also it should be wrapping up right around Christmas, which is what they want. You sit down at Christmas and the big happy Christmas miracle is happening in the show and so on and so forth. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with the show. It's just more of it.
It's okay. I enjoyed it. I'm gonna stick out the rest of the series. Cal seems quite interesting as the potential new Santa Claus. Yeah, and it's like Tim Allen being Tim Allen. It's like that's what people want from him. It's like, you know, that you don't. I know like there's some references and stuff of like, you know, not being able to say Christmas. Like you'd expect that kind of, you know, in a modern thing of it all. I don't know. I thought it was fine. Not the best thing. I don't know whether I still think this might have been better as just a film. It might have been able to not stretch it out as much because I think that was one of the issues with it being. But you got to look at it. It's like 6 episodes, half an hour a pop. That's only 3 hours, but that would have been nearly twice the length of one of them films. So there's a lot more scope. It's like being able to build the characters out a little bit. Almost like the issues with Santa of him having problems, rather than just doing like one problem. Oh, now there's a problem, and now we need to fix it. You're like, no, we're going to do this like 3 times over to make sure that you're. And we're going to stretch that bit out. So
it's not even just that. It's also, you know, the problem, of course, is he's losing weight, and they have all the jokes that are the inverse of what you normally have with the weight jokes. Like, I've got abs. I'm not supposed to have abs. And it's like, you know, that kind of thing. It's a funny one-off joke, but then it comes back, and then it comes back, and then it comes back. And this would be another one of those situations where it's like, you did the joke, maybe you do a callback to the joke, and then you move on. And because they've got 3 hours to fill, they kind of keep going back to the same jokes over and over again. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how it goes once we get past Thanksgiving, which is next week. I might be more ready for this and we'll pick it up. But again, nothing wrong with it. There's no like, oh man, Tim Allen's just phoning it in or the plot is stupid. No, it's a Christmas plot. Christmas needs to be saved. Santa needs to be saved or replaced. And he doesn't have the spirit. You know, that it's pretty traditional stuff. It's done well. It's executed well. after Thanksgiving, please.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm quite happy with it. It hit where I thought it was. My wife thought it actually looked. She thought she was surprised when the credits came up. She goes, "I thought it was a movie." That was the thing.
Oh, yeah.
The quality is there in it. I do think the special effects and stuff are all on par with what I would have expected from that kind of film.
Yeah.
Right. Let's now talk. I did actually just this morning. I watched the latest episode of the Mysterious Benedict Society. Carrying on with that show, that I'm enjoying it. Kind of weird of how the series seems to have kind of shifted into the Disney Channel zone, and it's completely been overshadowed. It's such a shame because it is a fun, good, but it does feel like they're really leaning in on the awkwardness a little bit more. It was a little bit like, okay, I'll watch this episode. Oh, can we get? It's a bit like with the first season where it's like it could do with a bit of speeding up in the middle a little bit. If it was a movie, most of this stuff would have been edited out.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It was fine. It was fine. I'm enjoying it. I mean, we've still got a few more episodes left. I'll be honest, I haven't watched Mighty Ducks for a couple of weeks. I just can't face watching that right now.
I have it on the background and not even like close paying attention. I'm looking over at bits and pieces, mostly when they're playing hockey it's going pretty much exactly the way you would expect it to go. It's not horrible, but as I mentioned in like the first week, it's tonally off because there's a whole lot of hockey's supposed to be fun. Hockey's supposed to let them kids be kids. And it's like 99% of the time I agree with you. However, you are at a camp specifically designed to bring out the best players, to groom them for the NHL or the AHL, things like that. Your hockey is meant to be fun, doesn't work here. Yeah. But it has gotten a little bit better. But if I went through the plot with you, I don't think there's a single piece that would surprise you.
No. I spoke about Limitless last week. Did you get a chance to check any of them out this week? What did you
I watched 2 of them. They are overall excellent. There were a couple of bits in the middle where it's kind of like, okay, yeah, you're a great guy, Chris. Awesome. Very cool. I'm glad that you're such a great guy. Let's go back to the documentary. But overall, definitely worth the watch. I will be checking out the remaining 4 episodes over the course of this next week. We won't be talking about them since now it's old, but I definitely recommend it. It's very good.
Yeah, it's very, very good. Also this week we had the penultimate episode of the Kardashians, so they ended up doing the whole Met Gala thing. And next week's kind of the big finale kind of thing. So watch that one with my wife the other day. I'm not going to bring. It's kind of one of those things you're watching. You're going, there's a lot of people and a lot of money being spent on a party for a dress. At which point you're going, why is there wasting so much money? How many people does it? 6 people go to a party and they need like 50 people entourage to get them there. Over the top, and that's all I'm gonna say.
It's like, over the top. Yeah, but you're tuning in to watch it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's what Mark says. It's our guilty pleasure. Yeah,
and that's perfectly fine. We all have our guilty pleasure shows. Obviously, Kardashians is not mine, but for people who enjoy that show, I'm sure it's going well.
We got the penultimate episode of The Walking Dead here in the UK. The finale, and I think the finale is maybe on AMC Plus in the US.
I
think it's
already aired. Right,
yes. So the finale is out on Monday. This series is like that kind of thing. Like they're building, they know it's the end, so they're like. I mean, I know there's gonna be lots of spin-offs, but you can sense like the building up to kind of finishing off the Commonwealth. I love this series. I can't believe it's like one of those this time like a year ago like I'd watched an episode 18 months later I've binged all 11. So no, it's been good. So I'm really enjoying that one. Also Willow's coming out on November the 30th. I can't give a full review until then. However, I have seen a number of the episodes and they're going to be getting 1 episode a week. This is really good. Really good stuff. I think this is what Disney Plus has been missing in the fact that it's not a Marvel or a Star Wars series. That is just, it's full fantasy. Again, it's kind of in that territory of like you think it's a movie, but it's not. It's high. There's a little bit of a weird thing with some of the music. The end music of every episode is like a modern song, like done differently. But I quite like it. It's just like Enter the Sandman came on. I'm like, this is just weird, but it was played in like a classic way. But that's like one of my favorite songs, and that's why I was like, oh, I know what that was. This is great. I can't wait for everyone to watch this one. It's going to be running for 8 weeks. So right through December and January. This is such a good series. I can't wait to talk about it a bit more in a couple of weeks when it comes out. Let's say by the time I can talk about it, I think I'll have seen 7 of the 8 episodes. But that shows you the faith they've got in it, because they're really leaning in on like letting us see it in advance. But yeah, really good series. Can't wait to talk about that one in a couple of weeks when that one comes out. Okay, let's now talk about Andor. So we had the penultimate episode of Andor drop this past week. Just a show that just continues to keep getting better, doesn't it?
It does. It's such a good episode, and the funny thing is, Andor himself is barely a part of this episode at all. You know, they escaped last episode, and now they're climbing a cliff, and they get captured. But the guys are like, "Ha ha, just kidding." And that was like the entire contribution to the episode. It was otherwise, you know, the ISB and Mon Mothma and
that poor little droid, just so cute.
Oh
you just want to pick it up. Can I say?
I feel more for that droid than most people, honestly.
It's so weird how they've done it, isn't it? It's like, can I come and stay? And it's like
it's a dog. It's a dog with a voice, but they play it perfectly. Where it's like, I don't want to leave. Maybe she'll come back. It's like, no, she's dead. She's not coming back. Well, maybe she will. And like, oh. No, stop doing this.
I don't want to be on my own. It's just like it's so gonna get blown up in this last episode.
I know,
defending Andor. You just know it's coming. But that droid is just pulls on the heartstring more than any. I mean, they could blow, you know, C-3PO up to bits and pieces, and it doesn't matter. But this droid's managed to pull on that little heartstring so differently.
They have blown up C-3PO. They've cut him in half and blown him up, and they've wiped his memory. And I'm just like,
yeah, whatever.
That sucks. But yeah, this droid is like, I mean, it's kind of Grogu-ish, actually, in a sense.
But no, I'm loving this show. It was a little bit sluggish. I thought maybe at some point it was definitely a little. You know, we're building up. There's not a lot of action. I mean, that's been a little bit of something like people. There's not a lot of action, but that whole thing with like the lightsabers out the ship was
kind of fun. Yeah,
that was fun. And there is a kind of speculation that he's a Jedi as well.
I wouldn't be surprised if they went that angle, or if not a Jedi, then maybe like a member of that church that the two characters from Rogue One are part of.
Yeah.
So not Force sensitive himself, but we'll have to wait and see. There's obviously a bunch of stuff coming in the final episode here. I guess one of the real questions will be, will we see what happens to Krieger, and will Saw show up and blow the cover, or are we going to let him die, and so on and so forth? Stuff. So there's a lot of very interesting things. Is Mon Mothma going to let her daughter get married off to this banker? You know, if we had talked about this like 5 months ago, before the show even came out, would be like, Mon Mothma. Oh yeah, those are sure. I'll sit through the Mon Mothma scenes to get to the Andor scenes, and now I'm just like, the Mon Mothma stuff is so incredibly tense, and so everything's going on. It is definitely a slower episode, but it's very clearly the episode building up to the final episode, and it would take a lot for them to screw this up. Like it might not live up to full expectations, because we're now at episode 12. Expectations have built up, but if it comes out and people are like, oh man, that was just Game of Thrones season 7 all over again, I'd be amazed, you know.
It's just very well done. And I feel like this is going to be a series that's just going to continue to draw people in over the next probably 2 years until we get season 2. I think this one's going to be like a slow burner. People check it out. Oh, because they're showing it on ABC, FX, Freeform.
Right.
They're putting it on Hulu for a couple episodes. I honestly think in some ways they'd be better off doing the whole run. I think they should just have done. I'll just do 2 episodes. You do the whole run on ABC for 12 weeks. Just let people see this. You know, this kind of thing of like because it's not got the same attention that Mandalorian's got. Get it out there. But yeah, no, just great one. And can't wait to see this the finale. So
I will definitely be getting up bright and early Wednesday, just like it's Christmas a month from now. Just like, all right, let's find out what happened, and then it's gonna be a really long wait for season 2.
See, I've got the opposite thing of like, and this guy gonna be. Then now I've talked about this episode. Now I'm gonna watch the finale.
I know, because you've got the
but I have not watched it because I didn't want to ruin it now, because I wouldn't. It's like, no, I need to be. It's like it wasn't thinking like, and I got to get the podcast out the way, then I can watch it, because so it's kind of weird. They don't normally do this with finales and stuff. They generally hold off, and they don't want, maybe the spoilers and stuff. But yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
I would suspect a little of it is because the show hasn't been generating the buzz that it really should be, but they know how quality it is and they know what people who are watching it are saying, but for some reason it's just not pulling in the numbers. You can talk about fatigue or um, not having a
Lights,
clear
yeah,
character. There's no lightsaber, there's no big X-Wing
toys.
fight. I mean, there might be next week, but
We did see some. Yeah.
yeah, it's not splashy the way Mandalorian is, but it is solid storytelling. So if they can put it in front of people on Hulu or Effects or anything like that, I hope that works. I hope it draws people in and keep the word of mouth. Let people know, hey, no, this is the Star Wars show that you've been looking for. This has got the Rogue One vibes. It's got mature themes. It's got adults. It's not cameo of the week. Cameo of the week is fine, but we don't need it for everything.
No. Right, now let's talk about Disenchanted. So this one came out yesterday. Now, yeah, I was aware you didn't watch this one, did you? You decided against it.
Well, you're making it sound much more negative than it was. It was Mickey Mouse, the hour-and-a-half documentary, Best in Snow, hour-and-a-half.
I can't believe you went with Best in Snow.
Well, if I'd known then what I know now, I would not have. And Disenchanted. But the main reason I picked Best in Snow over Disenchanted is because I've never actually seen Enchanted. So I didn't really have any hook into this. Having said that, if I could go back and do it again, I would pretend that Best in Snow did not exist, and I would have watched Disenchanted instead.
Yeah, it's a kind of shame again because so much dropped yesterday for you. But so I was able to watch it a couple of days early, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was a bit of fun. It was very whimsical, very kind of bit cheesy, bit charming. The music is probably nowhere near on a patch of the original one. I mean, the kind of like some of the songs like Ever Ever After from the first film are just like, you hear it and you think of Disney, and it's the theme parks, and it capped. The second one doesn't have that. It does have obviously a lot of strong. I don't know if I have to watch it a few more times, but I think I have probably only watched the first film once or twice. It's not one of my favorite films, but you could definitely tell with this one. There's a couple of times when they cut the budget where they did panaways, like there's a big ogre, because it's just his foot, or we're gonna do a big dragon, but we're only gonna show the smoke. it's just like they've cut the budget. Some of it looked great because it was filmed in Ireland. It's fun. It's not amazing. It's not going to blow anything people's socks off. It's a straight to video sequel. It is what it is. It's fun. I think if you like Enchanted, give it a whirl. Now, there is that kind of thing as well of like, it is 15 years later. The characters have got a little bit older. Obviously, like with Amy Adams now, she's like the evil stepmother in this one. And yeah, because she's that much older, she's now like, in her 40s. It's like she can't get away with being the princess the same way anymore. But it's fun. It's kind of definitely a fun film. I can see why they maybe didn't put it in cinemas. It probably could have brought in a few hundred million, but don't know. It was fun. I enjoyed it anyway.
I may at some point go ahead and watch both it and Enchanted.
I would say just watch the first one because it's
all right, fair enough. Enchanted is one that keeps coming up from time to time where people are like, oh yeah, no, it's a good movie. It's not a must see, but it's a good enjoyable movie. Sounds like this is kind of more of the same, but on a lower budget. Yeah. Am I disappointed that I didn't watch it this week? If we take Best in Snow out of the equation, not really. But again, if I could go back and tell myself with a time machine, no, just skip this. You're fine. This is what I would have watched instead.
Yeah. So there we go. So that is all of this week's. Like I said, there was a lot of stuff out because they've really kind of revved up for the Thanksgiving. They wanted to make sure. I think there was plenty out. So obviously next week we've got the finale of Andor. We've got an episode of the Santa Clauses, and next Friday we've got the Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. So that's definitely going to be the big release. I definitely feel like I think Disenchanted probably did the right thing in moving forward a week, because I feel like that with Strange World and Guardians, that kind of, and the Andor premiere or finale, that's quite a busy few days.
It's a very busy few days, and I think one of the things that people forget about doing the Thanksgiving holiday too is families start to get together before Thursday. So you might have people trickling in as early as Monday. More often than not, it's going to be like Tuesday or Wednesday. And you still want to have that thing to distract the giant family gathering on Wednesday. And if your release is going to be on Thursday, well, you have to have some things in place already. And Disenchanted might be a solid Wednesday night, calm everyone down before the main event on Thursday.
And it'd be interesting as well to see if they do a Disney Plus Black Friday deal. Normally, like Hulu does it. I don't think there's gonna be an annual one. I would be maybe like a cheap month, like $2.99 or $1.99, like they did for D23. Just on one.
I would say it's either going to be like a buy 1 month, get 1 month free, but with a limit of one purchase. So you get a 2-month subscription up front, but then you have to go monthly. Or like you said, you get a month for like $3 or something like
or maybe like $10 off an annual one or something.
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I wouldn't be surprised if they do a Black Friday deal. It won't even be Disney Plus itself. It'll be that Disney Plus merchandise wing that they opened on Shop Disney. I could see them doing a special Disney Plus sale there where you can get a Mandalorian shirt for $15 or something like that. Either way, keep the expectations low on that one. Streaming services generally don't go all in on Black Friday.
No, and as we always point out with Black Friday, it is all pretty much made up to make it look like. I mean, I brought video game, and it's like I've been waiting 2 weeks for it because it ran out of sale at the end of October, and I missed it by a day. I'm like, well, it's like it went up to full price, and then it went back to the sale price that it was at like 3 weeks ago. So like that's Black Friday. No, it's the same price. Well, they're just I mean, and Shop Disney notoriously some of it is quite expensive anyway. I know there's like a deal popped up the other day, like free shipping. I'm like, no, I don't need any more Christmas decorations.
I could use some plates, honestly, but nothing on the Disney store really leaped out at me. But yeah, especially once you get outside of Shop Disney, Amazon, of course, is one of the big ones, and then Cyber Monday as well. Especially in recent years, they have been notorious for increasing prices. So taking the MSRP and then increasing it and then lowering it back down to MSRP so it looks like it's on sale. Highly recommend using a browser plugin to tell you what the price trends have been.
I'm at that point of being that old and boring now that I'm looking to get a pressure washer for Black Friday to do the garden.
I need to replace my vacuum cleaner.
That's when you get to a certain age, you're like, oh, the video game sales though. Oh no, Lego, no, I need a pressure washer.
All right, well let's bring some Black Friday holiday spirit back into it. A lot of the sales have already started here. I went over to Best Buy yesterday to pick up the new Pokemon game. Yes, I do love the Pokemon games. And all of their movies were already on sale. So I ended up picking up a number of 4K ones for like $8 or $9 a pop. I got Shang-Chi, Eternals, Black Widow, and Everything Everywhere all at once. So one of these things is not like the others, but all of them very good, and I'm glad to have them in my physical collection now.
It's kind of fun. Pokemon's been one of those franchises I've never really got into, but so I ended up buying a load of like Destiny 2 expansion packs because I kind of fell into that hole this last couple of months. So
maybe we should play sometime. I have an account somewhere.
Yes, I remember buying it when it came out, the first Destiny 2, and I think it might have been the same time as like a big Disney video game came out. And so all my time went on, and I just ended up and then I, for some reason, just the other day did it. And so there we go. Right. Nevertheless, let's jump now into the end of the show. So thank you very much for watching.
Where are you going with this?
Yeah, we're going now. We're done. On that note, guys, thank you very much for watching. Make sure you go check us out over on whatsondisneyplus.com, especially if you're on Twitter. Follow us, find us on another platform just in case. And on that note, guys, thank you very much. See you guys soon. Later. Thank you very much for watching this video. Make sure you go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. Like, follow, and subscribe. Also, a huge thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and also on our YouTube channel memberships. And I shall see you guys in another video. Laters.